the silence that steals your soul. There's a kind of silence we choose, the quiet that comes with peace. And then there's the silence we are conditioned into, the silence that suffocates. We are born with a voice, and not just a sound, but a presence, a truth, a knowing, a sense of who we are and what we're here for. But along the way, the world teaches us to be smaller. Don't be so emotional. That's too much. No one wants to hear that. Be quiet. Be nice. Be agreeable. And in trying to be loved, accepted, and included, we begin to trade our voice for survival, our truth for peace, our fire for approval. But here's the reality we often forgetting. You cannot live fully if you do not speak freely. You cannot be seen if you continue to shrink. And you cannot be at peace if you keep silencing what is screaming to be heard. Today, I want to remind you of something your soul already knows: your voice matters. Use it. Point 1G. Your silence was a survival strategy. But you're not just surviving anymore. There was a time in your life when silence wasn't just a habit. It was a shield. It was the safest choice in rooms that didn't feel safe, in families that didn't know how to listen, and in a world that taught you early on that speaking your truth came with consequences. Your silence was never weakness. It was never cowardice. It was a survival strategy. And it worked. It protected your heart. It kept you from collapsing under the weight of shame, judgment, or rejection. You learned how to stay small so you wouldn't be seen. You mastered how to disappear in plain sight. And for a while, that was enough. But something inside of you always knew. You weren't meant to live your whole life in survival mode. There is a difference between surviving and living, between shrinking and standing, between being silent and being heard. And the most courageous thing you can do now is to recognize that the silence that once served you is not the path forward anymore. It is time to step into a new way of being, one that honors what got you here but doesn't chain you to it. You've spent years tiptoeing around your own needs, making yourself palatable, agreeable, and quiet so others would be comfortable. You've carried the weight of other people's expectations and buried your own. You've bitten your tongue, swallowed your opinions, and told yourself this is just how life is. But what if life could be different? What if you didn't have to keep muting your own voice in order to belong? You are not just surviving anymore. You are growing, healing, becoming, and growth demands a new kind of bravery, the kind that says, I deserve to speak, I deserve to feel, I deserve to take up space. Maybe you were taught that your emotions were too much, that your dreams were unrealistic, that your voice didn't matter. Maybe silence was the only language you felt safe speaking. But silence is not your native tongue. Your truth is, your story, your voice is, and even if it trembles at first, it deserves to be heard. The world doesn't need a quieter you. It needs a truer you, the version of you that can say, I am still standing, not in spite of my silence but because I learned from it. You are not ungrateful for the silence that protected you. You are simply ready to evolve beyond it. Survival kept you alive. But thriving asks something more. Thriving asks you to be visible, to show up, to speak, to risk, to love, to try, and that is terrifying when you've lived so long with silence as a friend. But don't mistake familiarity for freedom. Just because you've known silence intimately doesn't mean it's the only way to live. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to feel the fire in your chest that says, I can't keep shrinking to fit spaces that don't see me. You are allowed to ask for more, to say no, to say yes, to ask for help, to challenge what hurts, and to walk away from what no longer serves you. And yes, stepping out of survival mode can feel disorienting. You may grieve the quiet because it kept you safe. You may doubt your voice because you haven't heard it echo in a long time. That's okay. You are learning. You are rebuilding. You are becoming fluent in your own truth. This is not about shouting to be loud. It's about speaking to be real. This is about knowing that your story is sacred, even if others told you it wasn't. This is about no longer hiding the parts of you that felt unlovable or inconvenient. This is about understanding that your feelings are not liabilities. They are signals. That your intuition is not foolish. It is wise. That your voice is not a burden. It is a bridge. You don't owe the world your silence anymore. You don't owe it to anyone to keep folding yourself smaller and smaller so others can stretch out. You are allowed to unfold, to expand, to let your voice grow into the fullness of your being. Because there is power in your words, even if they quiver. There is truth in your story, even if it's messy. There is beauty in your becoming, even if it looks nothing like you imagined. You survived because you had to, but now you have the chance to live because you want to. And living fully means speaking truthfully. It means allowing your heart to be known. It means not just existing but engaging, deeply, honestly, and imperfectly. If no one ever told you this, let me say it clearly now. Your voice matters. Your words carry weight. Your story deserves daylight. You are allowed to be heard. And not only are you allowed, you are needed. There are people out there waiting to hear what only you can say. There are hearts that will recognize themselves in your courage. There are lives that will change because you chose not to stay silent anymore. So honor your past, thank your silence, and then lovingly release it. It brought you here, but it is not your home. Let your voice rise like a morning sun over the life you're now choosing. Not just a life where you survive, but one where you speak, love, risk, and rise. Not just a life of silence, but a life of soul. Point 2G. Your voice is more than words. It's your power. There is a voice inside you that isn't just about the words you speak. It's the fire in your gut, the rhythm in your chest, the energy that moves through you when you show up fully. It's not always loud. It's not always polished. But it's yours. And it is power. You may have been taught to believe that your voice is just about sound. The things you say out loud in conversations, the way you answer questions, the way you form sentences. But your voice is so much deeper than that. It's how you express who you are. It's how you stand up for what matters. It's how you show your soul to the world without needing permission. And when you truly own it, it becomes one of the most powerful forces in your life. Your voice lives in every choice you make. It's in the way you set boundaries, the way you say no with conviction or yes with courage. It's in the way you speak up when something is unjust or harmful. It's in the way you stand still when others expect you to shrink. It's in the way you tell your story, even when your voice trembles, because every time you choose to speak from the truth of who you are, with your words, your actions, your presence, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Many of us learn to fear our own voices. Somewhere along the way, you might have been told you were too much, too emotional, too opinionated. Maybe you were shamed for speaking out, or ignored when you finally dared to speak up. So you quieted yourself. You toned it down. You became what was expected of you. And that hurt, because every time you silenced yourself to make others comfortable, a small part of you went missing. But here's the truth. Your voice was never too much. The world was just too afraid of what it couldn't control. Your voice is your inner compass. It's the source of your strength and clarity. When you listen to it, you start to come alive again. You start to remember who you were before the world told you who you had to be. And in that remembering, you find your power. This power isn't about being louder than everyone else. It's not about dominating a room or winning every argument. It's about authenticity. It's about showing up in alignment with your values, your heart, and your story. It's about speaking your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. It takes incredible strength to own your voice in a world that constantly tells you to second-guess it. It's easier to stay quiet. It's easier to conform. But the easy road is not the brave one. The brave road is messy. It's full of missteps and doubt. But it's also full of growth, connection, and freedom. When you choose to use your voice, even when it shakes, you begin to change not only yourself, but the spaces around you. You give others permission to do the same. Your courage becomes a mirror that reflects their own. That's how real change begins. One brave voice at a time. Your voice matters in your relationships. It matters in your work. It matters in the small, everyday moments where you decide to be honest instead of agreeable, vulnerable instead of guarded, real instead of perfect. When you choose to speak from your truth, not to impress, not to perform, but to connect, you create deeper relationships. You invite intimacy. You build trust. Because people don't want a version of you that's edited and filtered to be liked. They want the real you, messy, honest, passionate, and brave. And when you choose to speak your truth to yourself, to stop lying about what you want, what you need, what hurts, you begin to heal. You begin to believe that your needs are valid, that your dreams are worth fighting for, that you don't have to abandon yourself just to keep the peace. Your voice is also your boundary. It is the line you draw to protect your energy, your heart, your integrity. Every time you say, "This is not okay," every time you say, "I won't accept that," you are standing in your power, not to control others, but to honor yourself. There will be people who won't like your voice. There will be people who try to diminish it, mock it, or ignore it. And that's okay. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to stay true to who you are, even if your voice makes others uncomfortable, because your truth isn't meant to make everyone comfortable. It's meant to make you free. Don't wait for someone else to give you permission to speak. Don't wait for the perfect words or the perfect moment. Your voice doesn't need to be flawless to be powerful. It just needs to be yours. And if you've lost your voice, if it feels buried under years of silence or shame, you can find it again. It starts with listening. Listening to your own heart. Listening to your pain. Listening to what your body is trying to say. You don't have to shout to be heard, but you do have to be honest. With yourself first, and then with the world. The more you use your voice, the stronger it becomes. Like a muscle, it grows with practice. And with every word you speak from your soul, you are not just expressing yourself. You are reclaiming yourself. Your voice is your power, not because of how loud it is, but because of how true it is. And when you speak from that place, from your courage, your values, your story, you create impact. You create change. You create connection. You are not powerless. You never were. You just needed to remember that your voice isn't just something you use. It's something you live. It's not just what you say. It's who you are. So speak, even if your voice shakes. Speak, even if your words are imperfect. Speak, because the world needs your truth far more than it needs your silence. You are powerful. You are worthy. You are ready. Point 3. Your voice is valid. Even if it makes others uncomfortable, there comes a moment in every person's life when they must decide whether they will stay silent to keep others comfortable or speak up to stay true to themselves. It is not an easy decision, because for many of us, discomfort was never an option we were allowed to cause. We were raised to believe that being good meant being quiet, that being loved meant not making waves, that being safe meant not speaking up when something felt wrong. So we learned to swallow our words, to nod along when our hearts wanted to scream, to smile when our spirits were breaking. But here is the truth. Your voice is valid. Earn your worth, even if it makes others uncomfortable. You don't need permission to speak your truth. You don't need the room's approval before you let your story be known. Your lived experience, your feelings, your values, your truth, they matter. They are real. They are worthy of being heard. And just because someone else feels uneasy when you share your truth, that doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make you difficult. It makes you honest. Unlearning the habit of silencing yours takes courage, because discomfort feels dangerous when you've been trained to equate peace with silence. But real peace is not the absence of conflict. Real peace is the presence of truth. And the presence of truth can feel unsettling for those who are used to avoiding it. When you begin to speak honestly, when you begin to name what others would rather keep hidden, when you begin to express your needs clearly, it can shake the very foundation of relationships built on quiet compliance. That doesn't mean you should stop. It means you are doing the brave work of becoming. You don't have to earn your worth. Being true your voice doesn't mean you're trying to hurt anyone. It doesn't mean you're being rude or aggressive. It means you're choosing not to abandon yourself anymore. It means you're honoring your story, even when it makes the room go silent. It means you're holding space for your humanity, even when others don't know how to hold it with you. And yes, your voice will make some people uncomfortable, especially the ones who benefited from your silence, especially the ones who preferred you agreeable, pleasing, and quiet. But you are not here to protect other people from your truth. You are here to be whole. You are here to be real. There is sacredness in speaking the words you've never said out loud. There is healing in naming the pain you've been carrying for years. There is power in saying, "This is who I am, and this is what I need," and you don't owe anyone an apology for that. Your voice might challenge someone else's narrative. It might disrupt the story they've told themselves about you. It might shine a light on something they were trying not to see. Earn your worth. And while it's not your job to make people feel bad, it's also not your job to keep pretending you're fine when you're not. You can speak from a place of truth and love at the same time. You can be kind and clear. You can be respectful and firm. You can be compassionate and honest. This isn't about choosing between being nice and being real. You can be both, but real has to come first. Every time you speak your truth, especially when it's hard, especially when you're afraid, you build trust with yourself. You strengthen your inner foundation. You prove to yourself that you will no longer betray your own heart to keep others comfortable. That is growth. That is power. That is liberation. It's okay if your voice trembles. It's okay if your hands shake. It's okay if you cry when you speak. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you alive. Emotions are not evidence that you've lost control. They are proof that you're connecting to what matters most. Let the words come however they need to. Let your voice be raw, real, human. There will always be people who don't want to hear you. People who dismiss your truth. People who try to gaslight you, shame you, or minimize what you're saying. Don't let that silence you. Their reaction is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to stay in alignment with your truth. You don't have to be eloquent. You don't have to have the perfect words. You don't have to have everything figured out. You just have to be honest. You just have to stay connected to what's true for you. That's enough. And sometimes, speaking your truth won't change anything on the outside. People might still refuse to understand. Systems might still be broken. Relationships might still fall apart. But something will shift on the inside. Something vital. You will stand taller, breathe deeper, feel more grounded in who you are. Because you'll know. No matter how others respond, you didn't abandon yourself. Your voice is a gift, a compass, a spark. It's how you declare your presence in this world. It's how you say, I exist, and I will not disappear. It's how you connect, resist, heal, and grow. When you use your voice with intention, you claim your power. And power doesn't mean control. It means wholeness. It means no longer being split in half between what you feel and what you say. You have a right to your truth. You have a right to name your pain. You have a right to tell your story. And if your voice shakes the ground beneath someone else's feet, maybe it's because the truth was buried for too long. So speak, even when it's awkward, even when it's not received well, even when you feel scared. Speak, not to be accepted, but to be real. Speak, not to provoke, but to connect. Speak, not because it's easy, but because you're ready. Let your voice rise. Let it unfold from your chest like a promise you made to yourself. A promise that says, I will not hide anymore. I will not shrink anymore. I will not erase myself to make others feel okay. You don't have to scream. You don't have to fight. You just have to be true. Let your voice reflect the truth of your story, the weight of your experience, the fire in your spirit. Your voice is valid. It always has been, even when others didn't listen, even when they rolled their eyes or walked away, even when they told you to be quiet. Your voice is still valid, and it's time you believed that too. Point 4. Your voice is a bridge. From isolation to connection, there are seasons in life when we feel deeply alone. Not because we don't have people around us, but because we feel unknown, misunderstood, disconnected, like we are living behind a wall that no one can see but we feel every single day. We long to be seen, to be heard, to be understood, but we often stay silent because silence feels safer than vulnerability, safer than rejection, safer than the fear of not being enough. And in that silence, loneliness grows. But here's what we often forget: your voice is a bridge from isolation to connection. A lifeline from hiding to healing, a sacred thread that weaves your story into the lives of others. There is so much power in speaking your truth, not just to prove a point, not just to be heard, but to be seen. When you allow yourself to use your voice, even in small, hesitant ways, you start to break the walls that have kept you apart, because your voice doesn't just carry your words, it carries your courage, it carries your humanity, and it invites others to bring theirs too. When you speak honestly about your struggles, your joys, your questions, your fears, something shifts. The distance between people begins to shrink. What once felt impossible to say becomes a shared understanding. What once felt like isolation becomes a moment of recognition. Someone says, I felt that too. I've been there. I understand. And just like that, connection is born. You don't need to have the perfect words to create connection. You just need to show up with truth. Your voice doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It needs to be real. And when you speak from that place, the real, raw, unfiltered place inside you, you're not just talking. You're reaching out. You're extending yourself across the space that once kept you separate. Think about the moments in your life when someone's words reached you, when they spoke something out loud that you had been carrying silently for years. It didn't matter if they were eloquent. What mattered was that they were honest, vulnerable, human. Their courage gave you courage. Their voice built a bridge. And now, you don't have the chance to do the same. Your voice has the power to say, you're not alone. I see you. I feel that too. And in a world that so often shames us into pretending we're fine, that kind of truth is revolutionary. That kind of truth saves lives. So many people are isolated not because they want to be, but because they don't know how to cross the chasm of their pain or fear or shame. They've been silent for so long, they've forgotten the sound of their own voice. But you have the power to lead the way, to go first, to show what it looks like to risk vulnerability for the sake of connection. You don't have to tell your whole story to everyone. You don't have to spill everything to be real. Sometimes connection starts with just a few words, a truth spoken out loud, a moment of honesty in a conversation, a shift from pretending to presence. It might feel uncomfortable. It might feel terrifying. That's normal. When you've lived behind a wall for a long time, every step toward connection feels uncertain. But it's worth it, because on the other side of that risk is something your soul has been craving. Real connection, the kind that doesn't demand perfection, the kind that doesn't require masks, the kind that says, "Come as you are." And here's what's beautiful: the more you use your voice, the more bridges you build. You begin to gather people who resonate with your truth, people who aren't afraid of your depth, people who aren't intimidated by your honesty, people who are drawn to the light of your authenticity, and together, you create a new kind of community, one rooted in truth, not performance, one built on realists, not roles. Your voice also bridges the gap between who you were and who you're becoming. Every time you speak your truth, you align more closely with your authentic self. You let go of old roles, old patterns, old fears. You step more fully into who you really are, and that kind of self-connection ripples outward. Because when you are connected to yourself, you can connect more deeply with others. You don't need them to fill your silence. You invite them into your truth. Your voice is not just for moments of conflict or confrontation. It's for moments of tenderness, of honesty, of grace. It's the quiet "I love you," the vulnerable "I'm scared," the hopeful "I believe in something better." It's the laugh that escapes when you let yourself be free. It's the sigh that says, "I'm tired, but I'm still here." All of it is your voice. All of it builds connection. Don't underestimate what your voice can do. It might be the thing that brings someone else out of the dark. You don't have to earn worth. It might be the thing that reminds them they're not the only one struggling. It might be the invitation they didn't know they were waiting for. And it might just be the bridge them back to themselves. So speak. Even if your voice shakes, speak. Even if your story feels unfinished, speak. Because your voice is more than a sound. It is a thread that connects you to something greater. It is the path from loneliness to love, from silence to significance, from surviving to belonging. You are not meant to walk through life alone. None of us are. But connection requires risk. It requires truth. And it starts with one brave voice, one vulnerable moment, one step across the bridge. Let that voice be yours. Let it carry your pain and your joy, your questions and your truths. Let it build bridges where walls once stood. Let it bring you back to the people who see you and to the person within you who has been waiting to be heard. You are not too much. You are not too complicated. You are not too emotional. You are human. And your voice, exactly as it is more than enough to build a life of connection, depth, and meaning. Speak and let the bridge begin. Point 5. You don't need to speak perfectly. You just need to speak honestly. Somewhere along the way, you may have learned that your voice must be polished. Your words must be flawless, and your sentences must land just right to be worthy of being heard. That if you don't say it perfectly, you shouldn't say it at all. That you need to be eloquent, calm, articulate, and strong in order to matter. So you hold back. You rehearse in your head 100 times before you let anything out. You measure every word, fearing that if you fumble, you'll be misunderstood, dismissed, or even shamed. And in doing so, you stay silent. Not because you don't have something to say, but because you've convinced yourself that your voice needs to meet someone else's standard to be valid. But you don't need to speak perfectly. You just need to speak honestly. Honesty is what breaks through the noise. Honesty is what reaches people. It's what connects us. Not the clean, curated version of our stories, but the real messy, uncertain truth of our experiences. You don't need to wrap your truth in perfect grammar or poetic language to be powerful. You just need to speak from your heart. Your voice matters not because it sounds polished, but because it holds your story, it holds your truth, it carries your experiences, your wisdom, your fears, your resilience. Your voice, even trembling and unsure, has the power to create change, not just in the world but inside you. Every time you choose honesty over perfection, you reinforce your own sense of worth. You build trust with yourself. You begin to believe that you are enough, just as you are. It takes courage to speak when you feel like your voice might crack or stumble. It takes courage to share something raw and vulnerable, especially when you're not sure how it will be received. But perfection is not the price of admission to meaningful conversation. Presence is, authenticity is, honesty is. The truth is, most of us don't remember perfect speeches. We remember the moments when someone said something true. We remember when someone spoke from a place so honest that it cut through every layer of our defenses. We remember the crack in their voice, the pause before the tears, the way their words felt like an open door. That's what makes a voice powerful. Not its perfection, but its ability to tell the truth. When you stop demanding perfection from your voice, you make room for authenticity. You let your words be alive, not rehearsed. You let your message be felt, not just heard. You let people experience you, not a performance of you. And that is what we all crave. Something real. You may worry about saying the wrong thing, about being misunderstood, about stumbling over your words. And yes, that might happen. You might say something awkward or incomplete. But the bigger loss isn't imperfection, it's silence. It's holding back when something inside you is begging to be expressed. The cost of staying quiet is far greater than the cost of not getting it right the first time. When you lead with honesty, people can feel it. Even if you're nervous, even if your thoughts aren't perfectly organized, there is something disarming and beautiful about someone who is willing to be seen as they are. Not polished, not scripted, just real. This is especially true in the conversations that matter most. Those moments when you need to set a boundary, express your needs, apologize, say I love you, or I'm hurt, or I'm scared. In those moments, perfection isn't what people are looking for. They're looking for sincerity. They're listening for your heart, not your vocabulary. You may think, I'm not good with words. I never know what to say, but you don't need to be good with words. You need to be good with truth. Speak what's real. Say what you mean. Let it be simple if it needs to be. Let it be emotional. Let it be human. Even if your voice quivers, even if you trip over your words, even if you pause 100 times just to find the right sentence, you're still showing up. You're still doing the brave thing. And that is always more powerful than perfection. When you give yourself permission to speak honestly, you also give others permission to do the same. You create space for real conversation, for meaningful connection. You create a world where people can show up imperfectly and still be worthy of being heard. Think about what you've missed by waiting to speak until it felt perfect. The moments you could have said, I'm hurting, I need help, I miss you, or I'm proud of you, but didn't, because you couldn't find the right words. Think about the peace you might have found, the healing you might have started, the love you might have received if you'd let honesty speak louder than fear. You don't have to wait anymore. You don't have to keep polishing your voice until it feels safe. Safe doesn't always mean silent. Sometimes the safest thing you can do for your soul is to speak. Speak before you feel ready. Speak before the words are perfect. Speak even if all you can say is, I don't know how to say this, but here's what I feel. That kind of truth is sacred. That kind of truth is healing. That kind of truth is enough. Let go of the idea that your voice has to be anything other than yours. Let go of the pressure to be eloquent. Let go of the fear that you have to be impressive. The most impressive thing you can be is honest. The more you speak from that place, the more confident you will become. Not because you've mastered the art of public speaking, but because you've built the muscle of self-trust. You'll know that you can handle being seen as you are. You'll know that your voice doesn't have to be perfect to be powerful. So start with what's true. Start with what you feel. Start with what matters. Say it imperfectly. Say it with heart. Say it like it's okay to be a little messy, a little scared, a little unsure, because it is. You don't need to speak perfectly. You just need to speak honestly, and that is more than enough. Point 6. When you use your voice, you give others permission to use theirs. There is something quietly revolutionary about one person choosing to use their voice. Not to shout over others, not to dominate a conversation, but simply to speak from the core of who they are. That kind of voice, honest, vulnerable, and rooted in truth, carries power. And what's most powerful is that it doesn't stop with you. When you use your voice, you give others permission to use theirs. You see, we live in a world where many people have been silenced. By fear, by shame, by culture, by history, by trauma. There are too many who've been told their stories don't matter, their experiences aren't valid, their emotions are too much, or their truth is too inconvenient. And over time that silencing becomes internalized. It becomes a belief that says, maybe I shouldn't speak, maybe it's safer to stay quiet, maybe no one wants to hear what I have to say. And then, someone speaks. Someone cracks open their story and lets the truth fall out. Not perfectly, not painlessly, but bravely, and in doing so, they create a ripple. One person's courage becomes another person's hope. One voice becomes the light that illuminates someone else's path. Because when someone sees you speak your truth and survive it, thrive through it, it tells them they can too. Your voice, especially when used with vulnerability, becomes an invitation. It says, it's safe to be honest here. It says, you're not alone. It says your story matters too. And for someone who's been holding their breath, shrinking back, or hiding in silence, that invitation can be life-changing. When you speak about what hurt you, you help someone else name their pain. When you talk about healing, about resilience, about boundaries, about joy, about grief, whatever your truth is, you are handing someone else a mirror. They may see themselves in your story, maybe for the first time, and that reflection is everything. It tells them they are not invisible. It tells them they belong. You don't have to be an expert to be impactful. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be honest. Because truth, raw, unfiltered, and real, has a way of reaching people's hearts in a way that nothing else can. There's a reason why certain stories stay with us. Why we remember the people who dared to say the things we were too afraid to admit. It's because they broke the silence. They broke the pattern. They created a space where authenticity could breathe. And in that space, others found the courage to show up too. Every time you use your voice, you push back against the narrative that says we should hide our real selves to be accepted. You push back against the pressure to be polished, to be agreeable, to be silent. And that resistance is not just for you. It's for everyone who sees you, hears you, and recognizes themselves in you. Your voice is a kind of leadership, not the kind with titles and authority, but the kind that leads with presence, truth, and heart. The kind that invites others to show up without masks. That kind of leadership changes families, communities, workplaces, friendships. It shifts the energy from performance to presence, from silence to connection. Think about a moment in your life when someone used their voice and it changed you. Maybe they said something you'd been itching to hear. Maybe they admitted something you thought only you felt. Maybe they stood up for what was right, even when it was uncomfortable. That moment lives in you because it gave you something, a sense of relief, of validation, of strength. You have the same power, and it's not just in big speeches or grand declarations. It happens in everyday moments. When you tell a friend you're struggling, you open the door for them to be honest too. When you say no clearly and kindly, you teach others that boundaries are not rejection, they're self-respect. When you name your needs, your dreams, your fears, your feelings, you are modeling what it looks like to live authentically. And someone is always watching. Someone is always listening. Not in a performative way, but in the quiet way people observe what's possible by how others live. You won't always know whose life your voice has touched. You won't always see the ripple effect, but it's happening. Every time you show up in truth, you create more space in the world for honesty, for courage, for connection. And it's important to remember, using your voice doesn't mean you always have to speak in public. It can be the words you write, the boundaries you set, the stories you tell to yourself in the mirror when you finally start believing you deserve more. It's every act of honesty, every moment of saying, this is who I am and this is what I need. That is using your voice, and it matters. We sometimes think we have to wait until we're confident, until we're sure, until we're healed to speak. But the truth is, your voice doesn't come from having it all figured out. It comes from being willing to show up even when your hands are shaking, even when your voice cracks, even when you don't know what comes next. Because that's where the connection is. In the realness, not the perfection. So speak. Speak even when it's hard. Speak even when you think no one's listening. Speak for yourself, yes, but also for the person who hasn't yet found the strength to speak for themselves. Speak because you remember what it was like to be silent, to wonder if your truth was too heavy, too weird, too much. Speak because you know now it wasn't. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be willing to let your truth breathe, willing to believe that your story has value, willing to trust that your voice can light the way not only for you, but for others. Your voice is more than expression. It's expansion. It expands what's possible for the people around you. It expands the culture of courage. It expands the belief that we don't have to hide anymore, that we can be real and still be loved. So when you wonder if it's worth it, if your voice matters, if anyone will care, remember this: someone needs the story only you can tell. Someone is waiting to see someone like you go first. And when you do, they'll find their own voice in the echo of yours. That is how the world begins to heal, one brave voice at a time. Speak. Even if your voice shakes, let me leave you with this: your voice is a miracle. It has survived shame. It has survived silence. It has survived rooms that made you feel too small to be heard. And yet it's still here, inside you, waiting, whispering. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be faithful to yourself. Speak, even if your voice shakes, even if they don't listen, even if you're scared, because your voice matters, because you matter, because you are here to be heard.